welcome to EVA's webinar today. We're so excited to have you and have our special guests with us. But before we start, and to give people a few moments to join us and get acclimated to your Zoom window, thought we'd go over our typical housekeeping rules or guidelines or just tips for the day. We are recording this webinar, so everyone will be muted. However, if you have any questions, thoughts you'd like to share with us, feel free to do that here in the chat box of your Zoom window. We also will be sharing with you a Jamboard link. If you haven't used Jamboard, it's one of the things we'll be talking about today, and one of the things that you'll be able to play with if you like to while we're on this webinar. I know that's one thing that I like to do is try out new gadgets, new tools, so hopefully that'll be something fun for you. We will be making sure that you get a copy of this recording and any links to tools that we share with you today. This session is CAE and CMP approved. So what that means is if you stay with us through the whole hour, we will send you a certificate of attendance shortly after this webinar. If you don't get that certificate by any chance, definitely reach out to us. We're happy to check to see where in the email world it went. Now, we are excited here at EVA. We're an all-in-one event management platform, and we have learned a lot throughout our process of working with clients, as well as learning from our colleagues and peers. And we do these webinars a lot to share what we've learned and also to learn from you all as well. So we're excited to be able to offer these and hope that you sign up and join us in future ones as well. We talked a little bit about the Q&A, so definitely feel free to ask us questions along the way. We'll try to get to them when we can. We'll definitely leave room at the end for those. Today's topic is near and dear to me. This is a topic that goes beyond just the virtual world. It is a question that I am often asked as a meeting planner. It is, what can we do at meetings, events, at conferences to make it more engaging? And I'd like to hear from y'all out there. We have a Mentimeter. Oh, and I forgot to introduce before we go any further, Alexis Smith is our Zoom tech here today. She is going to be sharing her slides and screens. And if you need any help on the tech side, Alexis is there for you. Alexis, can you throw up that one slide that people can go to Mentimeter? I recently learned this from a client. A Mentimeter is an interactive tool that you can share here online with people in person or online. And the question I have for you is, in terms of engagement, how much more engaging could your event be? Definitely. You can get to this in different ways. You can either go to the link that Alexis is going to put into the chat here, or you can go to menti.com and press the number, put in the number 2449-3188. And we'll give you a few minutes to complete that, and we'll continue with the conversation and come back and see how you all feel about that. And if you have any trouble getting to that link, just let us know. We're happy to guide you a little bit more. So while that's happening, so that's a topic that it's often comes to me, a question that comes to me: how do we make our meetings more engaging? How do I get people to connect with one another? Because that's one of the most important things that our attendees want to do. And so I'm glad to be able to have Jenny and Lee with us here today. Jenny, I am so excited to have you guys. This will be a fun conversation. Jenny Winkworth she's a program manager for the Agents Council of Technology. I and my team have had the pleasure of working with Jenny on a couple of virtual conferences, and it has just been very enjoyable. Jenny, welcome today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vanu. I am very excited to be here and share my great experiences with everybody.
And then we also have Lee Gimple. He's the president of Better Meetings based here in the Washington, D.C. area. And Lee does exactly what his company says, help you develop better meetings. It can't be any easier than that. And, you know, I was trying to think of great ways to describe you guys. And I think there are two slogans that really come to mind. Lee, for you, it is Nike's "Just Do It." That slogan to me fits you perfectly because you have some of these great ideas and some that you're going to be sharing with us today that aren't complicated and can be really easy to implement. And Jenny, in your positive attitude, working with us and working with Lee has just come out. And your slogan for me is, we can do it. And
we can do it. We did do it. We did do it.
We did do it. So with that, Lee, I'm going to pass this off to you and get us started, because this is really, a culmination of some great ideas that you've had, not only for Jenny, but for various clients, and how you made it happen. So I'm just going to toss it over to you for now.
Yeah, and let's come back to the Mentimeter in just a moment or so, but let me, I'm going to share something in a sec. Hey, everyone, welcome. Nice to have you here. Nice to see some familiar names in the attendee box there. So as promised, we're going to try and take some questions at the end here. And what I'm going to ask you to do, if you haven't used this before, is to try doing this on Jamboard. So I'm going to just quickly show you what that looks like. So I'm going to steal the screen here from you, Alexis, and it's going to look like this. So that's Jamboard. If you have questions for us or you have comments, you're welcome to drop them in the chat. You're welcome to use the Q&A. Jamboard is something that Ginny and I and her team were working on as we were actually building out this conference as a way to collaborate. But then it's also a really nice engagement tool that you can use in your conferences to get people engaged, right? Instead of just what you're doing here, staring at us, right? You can do something else. So really simple. As I'm looking at my other screen here, there's a big note that says sticky notes, or a big arrow that says sticky notes. You pop it up and you would say something like, how to engage more or something. And then you hit save. It pops up here. You can move it around. You can drag it. You can make it bigger. You can change the colors. We're just basically going to leave this Jamboard open. And I would invite you all just to, as you have questions or if you have comments, just drop them onto the Jamboard. It's really, hopefully we'll get some good comments and questions out of it. But really just a way to let you see how this works and try something out as we're talking kind of in the background here. So that's about all I'm going to say about Jamboard. I see somebody else has dropped something on there. So there you go. I was going to drop into, the process here, Vanu, but did you want to talk through the Mentimeter before we get to that?
Yeah, let's just throw that back up there. Let's see what everyone's kind of saying here. If you don't need your conference or meeting to be more engaging and you have solved the $1 million question, we would love to talk to you. But it does seem like everyone there we go, 70% or more. We're always looking for new ways. So that I think is kind of telling, and especially for that much height of a degree. And I think also, not only with in-person events, but virtual as well has been quite challenging for people with that learning curve, as well as just finding out what tools work. So what are your thoughts on this, Lee?
We talked about this beforehand, and I thought people were going to be much more optimistic and say we only have like 10% to go. But I think that's about right. I mean, I think there's a lot of room for improvement that when we think about all the different facets of a conference, I think there are a lot of different ways that we can increase engagement, and a lot of them, like you were saying, just do it stuff, are not super difficult. And I think we're going to try and give people some real things that they can leave with here today and go, oh, I could just do that thing that Ginny did, and it'll make things better. So I think that's actually kind of helpful to see, and I like Mentimeter is a nice tool. You want to I guess we'll just go from here. I'll take
for it. Yeah. Go for it. We do have another poll question that we can talk about a little bit later, but we'll come back to it. So don't lose Mentimeter, everybody. We'll come back.
We'll come back to it. So Ginny, we'll walk through just a little bit of like who you are and what the big I is and what ACT is. But what is, like, at the end, looking back, you've already done this event that we were talking about that was about a month or two ago now. What is your headline for it? Like, spoil it for us. What's the end of this case study look like?
So it's funny, Lee, because when I was preparing for this, I actually was thinking in terms of a real headline, like from a newspaper. And basically what I came up with was the ACT Tech Summit exceeds expectations, because that's the message I think that I would want everybody to know. And really that's for the organizers as well as the attendees. It surprised us really how much difference the small, and I think a lot of them were small things, small differences that we implemented, what a difference that they actually made.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I am just going to basically make people familiar with the big I, which is the Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers of America. That's what big I is easier to say.
Correct.
And then, you are part of a program called the Agents Council for Technology, right? For technology.
Exactly. Yep. And abbreviated as ACT.
ACT. And you want to just tell folks, you had obviously been doing this conference in person, and then it moved online, but tell us just a little bit about the conference, like who goes, why do you do it?
Sure.
People. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. And you're exactly right. I mean, up until March of 2020, we do 2 typical meetings a year, and they were always in person. But obviously, 2020 changed a lot, and we needed to come up with a different approach and pivoted to virtual. So we did a couple of virtuals, I think 2 or 3 virtuals before we actually landed on using EVA, which was like a fabulous change that we made. But the conferences themselves are designed for independent agents, carriers, insurance carriers, and technology vendors that it provides services for the independent agent. So all those entities come to our conferences really just to have discussions about the technologies that are available now, and then also future ones that can help independent agents do their jobs better, basically be more efficient and more effective. So in person, we would average maybe 150, 200 people maximum. In an in-person meeting. Virtual was far better than that. This last conference actually that we did in April, we had over 500 registrants. So that was fabulous, and that to me is one of the great benefits of the virtual platform, because people that couldn't travel or wouldn't normally travel could be there virtually and get obviously that great content.
Yeah. And so I forget the word you used, fabulous or something to describe Venu and EVA, but so you had done it without Venu and the team there. Tell me, or I guess maybe just between the two of you, you want to have a little conversation about how did you come to be on each other's radar, and how did that partnership work? And, because you've now done it twice, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, so initially, as I said, we'd been planning an in-person conference for March of 2020. So up until, not very long before that, we were planning on being in person, and then, everything shut down. So we pivoted virtual really on the fly and did just some straight like Zoom recordings, and it was good. It was adequate, and our content was fine. And we delivered it okay. And then
I just want to stop you. Adequate, fine, and okay. Those are the words that I'm hearing.
Exactly. I mean, it was okay. But, as time went on, and who knew, how long we were going to all need to be virtual, nobody could predict, obviously, back in the beginning. But as time went on and we needed to produce more and more of these, we're the Agents Council for Technology, right? So we needed to up our game. It was like, we need to offer our attendees more than just some straight Zoom recordings. So how EVA came on our radar, I mean, we really demoed several different virtual platforms, and saw all different solutions, from the best to the worst kind of thing. And we're impressed with EVA. They fit our budget and far exceeded what we ever thought that we would get. So it was, that was how we came on their radar. I don't know. I don't think we came on your radar until we came to Avenue, but.
No, and it was a match made in heaven, because we really do like working with partners in creating this experience that works not only for what your mission is, but what also your capacity is, what you really can take on. Although we're providing the software to make it happen, it's great to be able to see your vision come to life.
Well, and that was really, I think, the icing on the cake, because we had our content, we had, great panelists, we had, really good topics, we had all of that, but presenting it in the EVA platform just kicked it up a notch. It upped our game, and that was exactly what we wanted to do.
Well, what I thought was really interesting in the first year that we worked together, you had your program, did pretty standard what most people did. You had your program, you had people speak, and then you did a Q&A in those sessions, and it worked fine. But what we were hearing from you is, what else can we do? What else, and these were things that you were thinking about for your in-person as well.
Yeah, so exactly.
It was great to be part of that thought process with you, and being able to bring together you and Lee together to have that conversation of how do you make that happen?
And that is exactly really what happened was, again, we went from just our straight Zoom recordings that we offered to then obviously having the EVA platform, which was wonderful, and it looked beautiful. I mean, we got so many compliments just from our inner organization about, oh, it just looks great, and the navigation for people going and checking out the speakers and our supporting members, everything was fabulous. But again, time dragged on, and here we were 2 years later into this whole thing saying, all right, we need to up another notch, right? Like, now what are we going to do? So that was when we were able to be introduced to Lee, actually through a webinar, not dissimilar to this one. I became aware of Lee because it was about engaging people virtually. And I was like, yeah, I need to learn about that. So we were able to connect with Lee at that point, and he really kind of pushed us out of our comfort zone, which was fabulous. We needed that. So Lee, I don't know if you want to talk about that piece of it or not, but
I love pushing you out of your comfort zone. I feel like that should be the takeaway. It also seems like that's all I do is I just show up on webinars. I yell about engagement. That's my whole life. Well, so one thing that we're doing here today to say, basically to not have as many people on stage, which I think tends to kill panels, right? You have like one moderator, then like 6 panelists or something. So here we only have 3 people, but we are passing the hat. So Vinu and I are sort of trading off moderator duties. And I want to come back, Vinu, to the like sort of the tech versus the people part of it, but maybe as long as well, you tell me. I mean, do you want to handle that? And then we'll come back to the sort of engagement piece, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk a little bit about the tech. I mean, the tech is the tech is tech, right? It's software, no matter who you use, if it's EVA or someone else, you're given tools to go and do great things. Using those tools is really up to the client. And that's the hard part from us. We can give you examples of what we've seen that work, and what we've seen, what we learned from other clients, and share that. But to actually make it happen using those tools, sometimes you need that extra help. And we really place that into our clients' hands. So when we were thinking about year 2 with Jenny, and she was wanting to explore this, it was only natural to say, hey, let's bring in someone that has experience with redefining what meetings and event experiences are, and then bringing you into the picture, Lee. What everybody wants to talk about is this process, right? Like, how do you make it more engaging? So Lee, what was your start? And we made this introduction between you and Jenny. What's the starting point? Like, where do you begin to say, okay, let me figure out how I can help them be better at doing meetings?
Yeah, so I'm gonna let you chime in here a little bit, Jenny, but I'll say the first conversation we had, because we had done something like this, and I don't want to flatter myself. Jenny said, like, "Oh, could you MC for our event?" I said, "Yeah, but like maybe we could do some more stuff behind the curtain and then worry about the fun, happy person in front of the curtain." In the end, you found someone else who was awesome from within the insurance field to do that piece. So I was like the little angel sitting on your shoulder behind as you were planning this. And then one of those things on your to-do list was find an MC to go and, do that original role that we had talked about. So I have more stuff to talk about, but do you want to add to that at all, Jen?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely the case. I mean, because of the impression that you made on me, Lee, in that webinar that I'd seen you on, I'm like, we need him, right? Like we need his face, we need his energy, this is what we need. And that was exactly what happened. Is you said, you know what? I think I can maybe serve you better by, helping you through some other types of changes that you can make. And as you said, find, someone else, which actually worked out great because we did have a wonderful MC from within the insurance industry, and an agent, bubbly, lots of energy. So Cassandra really, put sort of the icing on the cake of that. But really her hosting just sort of introduced all the different concepts, I guess, that we put into place, based on the meeting design that we did with you, Lee.
Yeah. So process-wise, I think that was the question originally, Vinu. So I think there's two things that we started with. So one, Ginny, was to say, can we just do a quick survey of the attendees and the sponsors and the folks who are going to be at this event and say, what the heck do you want? Why are you going? What are we trying to deliver to you? And I think it's easy to assume that, and sometimes we get it wrong. We think, oh, they definitely want this, and they actually wanted this other thing. And then I also think a lot of events have run for a long time, and we've just sort of drifted away from like, why are we doing this thing? And I had assigned you and Ron this homework assignment, which I think I still have the cards from when we did this, right? So this is the 5 whys, right? And so I think it comes from manufacturing, is a lot of where 5 whys is used, but it's a facilitation technique. But I think it's just a really good way to get people to look in the mirror, or organizations to look in the mirror and say, well, why are you doing this event? And I'll just run through it quickly. So typically I say, well, why are you doing this event? And the first answer is something like, well, we do it every year. It's our annual conference. That's why we do it. And you go, yeah, okay, it's not a great answer, but okay, I understand. So why do you do it every year? And people say, well, honestly, it's in our bylaws. It's part of our, we're an association. We exist to do this annual conference. That's why we do it. Okay, but why do you do it every year? Why is it important enough to be in your bylaws? And you say, well, it's to bring our members together, right? And you go, yeah. I mean, that's basically what all conferences do, to bring members together, sure, and to share knowledge, right? And why do we do that? This is not the ACT one, but and this is like to cure childhood cancer or something, whatever your association is or your organization. Then we get to that last one. And now I'm going to put you on the spot here, Jenny, not that you need to come up with your 5th why, but you want to talk about what it was that we were trying to get to there?
I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying.
In the end, like, we had gotten through those 5 whys, and I think you were saying, it's really like, the thing that sticks out to me is that it was this non-competitive forum for people
right, exactly. It's really a sharing, a collaboration. I mean, and it's kind of unique, I guess, in that respect, because we are taking individuals that do compete with each other, right? So we have, as our supporting members and people that attend our conference, we have a multitude of insurance carriers, which obviously all compete with each other, and technology vendors as well. But really what ACT tries to do, and I think does do, is brings all of those stakeholders together, including our independent agents who we want to help. And everybody takes off the company hats and gets together and shares ideas and tries to maybe understand, where everybody else is coming from, and walk away from that with ways to make the independent agent channel better, which is really the ultimate why, I guess.
Yeah. And so I'm going to share. So we did the 5 whys thing to try and like really hone down on what we were trying to create. And then we did this survey, just a really quick and dirty survey with just Google Forms. And we got back maybe 100 replies. I don't know.
I don't remember what the end result was.
It was enough. And I think it gave us some guidance in terms of, here's what people who are attending want from this event. And I think that helps steer it. And then I'm going to just, Jenny, have you walk through quickly on my share screen and tell us maybe what we are looking at here. This should not be a surprise to you.
So this is the skeletal schedule that myself and ACT's executive director, Ron Burke, who had retired actually just last month, but Ron and I had come up with when we first met with Lee, like, this is what we're doing. And this isn't unlike what we originally did way back when we first pivoted to virtual, and we did those sort of straight Zoom recordings. It was like, from this time to this time, this is what we're gonna do, and it's gonna be pre-recorded, and this is what we're gonna talk about. And then Lee's like, yeah, let's blow that up, right? let's make some changes there. Right?
Gently, he said that gently.
No, in a great way though, and I think I always, Lee, I guess just as an aside, came out of the collaboration sessions that we had with you energized. It was like, yeah, okay, we can do that, and this will make a difference. And so I don't know if you're going to now reveal,
you're right. The big reveal.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, I think it's very typical when people come through the door. Often they're like, well, we have these segments and these sessions, and that's pretty much it. And a lot of times when we go back to that Mentimeter and you say 70% of the audience here, the audience thought we could be 70% more engaging in our events. And I think that's where we start to see it here, right? So we basically had 4 sessions a day. They were all pre-recorded and they were all strung together, right? 12 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, right? And what we were trying to do was open this up and let it breathe. And the thing that you and Ron had talked about a lot and that came back from the survey is engagement, which is, of course, all I do is I just go to webinars and yell about engagement. So we found the right thing. So I'm just going to go to the next page here. And again, this is us using Jamboard as a collaborative tool just among the conference design team. And we could use it as we were, other folks are using it now to do the questions, but this was just between a team of like 3 or 4 of us, right? So
correct.
So this is what it looks like. There's a lot more color. There's a lot more going on. This is not actually the final version, but I think it's a good representation. It's a good representation of thinking that went on. So do you want to just sort of talk through, how we were thinking through this?
Sure. So really some of the big changes I think that we made looking at the schedule wise was introducing some breaks in between. We just, I don't know, again, in the essence of time, like, oh, we want to, put them all back to back together. And, and Lee's like, hey, give people some time, get up, get a coffee, stretch their legs, whatever. So we definitely built in breaks, which I think helped significantly, truthfully. But we also added some morning networking things too. We weren't going to start till noon, but then we did decide to start a half hour early and just have some, ice breaking things and get people on and talk and introduce some of the things we were going to talk about. So all of those things, I mean, there were a lot of other things we implemented that helped engagement, but just from a scheduling standpoint, this, certainly, as I think you said, Lee, let it breathe. It really didn't keep everything so tight and together, and really, I think, really made a difference.
Yeah, I mean, and you'll see, right? Those yellow squares are still largely the same, and you had still largely recorded them. And one of the things that I think I was pleasantly surprised about when we did the survey is usually people say, I kind of hate the content, right? It's just people standing up there and talking. And I was really surprised that people, almost to a response were like, the content's really good. You guys do a bunch of panels. The speakers are good. That wasn't the problem. What people were saying is, in addition to that, we want, to meet other insurance agents and other people
right, and be vendors, be more involved and not be so preached to. Yeah. And Lee, I don't know if you're planning on holding up the card that I love.
I'll do it, and I will hold it up in a way that
was another
Tony called me out on it. I'll hold
was
it up
another really big. I think this was a big change, an easy change, but a big impactful change.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to just explain that super quick or not, but
yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, we talked about this on the original one. So thank you for calling me out on this, Tony. Okay, so usually what we see in conferences that are built around this first model, right? And this is unfortunately kind of what we're doing here today, but it's a little different. But we introduce somebody and we say, Jim is an expert in whatever, and then we give Jim 45 minutes to just do a PowerPoint or an hour or whatever that is, and that's all up to Jim. It's all on Jim's shoulders, right? And then all the engagement comes at the end, assuming it didn't run long and assuming, he didn't take too long or we didn't start late, is we get a couple minutes for questions. And that's it. That's all the engagement. And the sandwich here, sort of this engagement sandwich, I think that we're talking about, Vanu, as we were promoting this, is we can still do the introduction. We might do a shorter thing that's an interview, or it's a Pecha Kucha or an Ignite talk, or it's something easier or smaller. And then we can do some breakouts, right? We can do breakouts online, and we can use breakout rooms, and EVA does that. EVA builds in Zoom, so that was easy to use. In person, right? We would just do small tables or turn to your neighbor. There's lots of things we can do there. And then this last part is just driven by what's happened here is, do we take questions? Do we have discussions? If you're the world's expert on, apple picking, can you answer questions from the audience about apple picking? You can, right? Or being an independent insurance agent or insurance tech or whatever. It's much easier here, right? This is a much more satisfying, engaging session. It's also a hell of a lot less work for the speaker and, whoever's running. It's just like, can you talk? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here today. None of us prepared PowerPoints for this session. And that's kind of what, to go back to the schematic here, we tried to add some of those things into like the live town hall, and then in between sessions, we gave people chances to debrief and talk. So just a lot more conversation time. The
change, I think the change from a literal 50-minute recording conversation, not even a conversation, a panel, to a much briefer, 15-ish minute presentation panel piece, and then opening breakouts were hugely impactful. Our audience in our post-event survey unanimously said the breakouts were awesome, because we took people after the presentation, which was short. We gave them a very specific pointed question based on that content. And then EVA was able to break everyone into separate Zoom rooms quickly, simply, and allow people to have a conversation about that question. Brought them back into the main room, and then we all the panelists talked about it, and the people that were in the breakouts, told us what they had talked about, and it just far more engaging, just far more engaging.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, if you look at I don't know how good your Zoom is on your screens out there, but if you look at the agenda as we've put it back together here, it looks really busy, and there's colors and all this stuff here. But in the end, it really wasn't a huge change, and we didn't add lots of time, right? So I think the original one went from noon until 4. The first day, we added a half hour. We went from 11:30 to 4. And then we did the same thing the second day.
So we only added a half hour, right?
Exactly. But we carved off like 15 minutes out of those sessions, and we added in 15 minutes elsewhere. We gave some time to sponsors and exhibitors, and like all these little things that I think add up. When we talk about that Mentimeter, if there's this extra 70% that we could get to, I don't know that we fulfilled all 70% that we could have gotten to, but it's a lot more engaging than, when we go back to, that, right?
And skinnying down the presentation piece was intimidating at first, absolutely, because that's the way we've always done it. We have all this content and we have to present it. This is where our value lies. But it didn't work out that way. I mean, it really worked out that people felt far more value from having those discussions with other attendees, and then being able to share that with the panelists. And the feedback was really good.
And some of those attendees are vendors who want to sell stuff, and they're just in those breakout rooms and they're just meeting other attendees. So I think the attendees go, oh, I got to meet the person from whatever that tech company is. And the tech company person goes, wow, that was great. I actually got to meet real people that are interested in my stuff, which wouldn't happen if it was just watch a session, go home, right?
Exactly. And in our breakouts, I mean, not to get ahead of what you're talking about, Lee, but after the breakouts, we did utilize the Jamboard to illustrate the content then that came out of those breakouts. We did not open the Jamboard up to everyone. I think we were just a little like, oh my gosh, there's so many changes. Do we really want to do that?
Yeah.
But we did use the Jamboard to be a visual piece of engagement for people, to pop up a lot of the things that were being said in the chat, and really just to keep people kind of, like I said, visually engaged.
Yeah. And, if you look at the colors here, right, there's the one for the town hall that went from a recording to this new format where it was live. And the other ones were recorded. But then if you look at all these pink sections and the blue sections, they're things that we added in. And I feel really strongly that if it's an event, and people are coming together for a conference, they're not just watching, TV. They're not just watching recordings. So it's not just that MFA town hall was live. It's that all those pink sections were live. The intros to the day were live. The cocktail hour at the end was live, where people really were like, oh, I met my colleagues. I met my peers, which is different than I sat at home and I watched 2 days of videos, right?
Yep.
So Lee, we actually have a question here, and I think just for clarification, there's two things that we're talking about with Jamboard, right? The Jamboard that you're showing us now is kind of what you and Jenny used in brainstorming how you're going to redefine the meeting to be more engaging, right? And so that was just kind of more internal brainstorming, right?
Yeah.
And then how did you use Jamboard for the attendees? How was it? How did they use it? What were the type of questions, or when did you talk to us a little bit about, like, how was it intentful in terms of, like, how did you communicate it out? How did you use it? And what was done with it afterwards?
Yeah. And right. The first thing I'll just say is, like, we're using Jamboard as, I think, like a proxy for lots of things that you can do that aren't just people talking to cameras, right? That we can collaborate on something. Could be Google Docs, could be Mural, could be Jamboard, lots of things. Jamboard's just an easy one to show people at this point. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. And the way we utilized it, Venu, was when people came back from the breakout rooms back into the main room, we had basically a blank Jamboard up. But it did have the question that we had posed to them before they went into the room, sort of pre-populated onto the Jamboard. And then as they came out, they put sort of a summary of whatever, points or things that they talked about into the chat. And then Kristen's question is asking the staff posted to the Jamboard. That is the way we did it. So we took those chat answers, bullet points, whatever they were, and pop them up onto the Jamboard so everyone could see visually in front of them, all the different ideas and things that had happened during the collaboration time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be kind of hard to follow along in chat, all the questions and everything that's sharing. So it's great that you have this external tool to be able to do that.
Exactly. And it was nice. You can move the stickies around, and kind of categorize them if we had a certain theme going. And so it was very helpful. And then one of the things that you just said about the using afterwards, that's a great point, because what we did was packaged up. We had a recording of our whole session, right? So, from beginning to end, for example, we'll just, since we're staring at the Jamboard, we'll say that first one on Tuesday, carrier strategies for agency tech enablement. We had a recording of that session from start to finish. We packaged up that recording along with a PDF of the Jamboard and a summary of the section, a summary of the session altogether for the attendees. And then we also distributed that out through some of our distribution channels too. So it was a really nice little package of everything that had happened.
Yeah, well, what I like about that is that you're encouraging people to share before, during, and after, whether they could participate live or not. And I think that's a lot of times we struggle with that as a meeting planner. Like, how do we be inclusive to people who can't make it for whatever reason? And again, this doesn't have to be just virtual, right? You can use Jamboard in a live environment as well.
Yeah, you can also use, the original Jamboard, which is just sticky notes, right? And there's so much that we can do in person that we sort of find proxies for online, and sometimes it works great, and sometimes, doing it in person is really awesome too. But yeah, I think whatever we can do that gets people that makes this two ways and makes it into an actual event instead of sit down and watch video, is a lot of what Ginny and ACT were trying to do, and what we were hearing from the people in terms of, I want to meet the tech vendors, I want to meet my peers, I want to like learn best practices. And yeah, I'm going to hear that from the stage, but a lot of the value that comes from going to an event, going to a conference, are those like hallway moments, right? That don't have to happen in a hallway. They can happen in a Zoom room. They can happen on a Jamboard page, right? That we can do some of that is not just passive one way, watch a recording and then watch another recording.
And truthfully, none of this was difficult to implement, truthfully. I mean, the most difficult piece of it, I think, was getting out of our own heads about it, right? Like this isn't the way we've done it. And oh my goodness, and what's going to happen, And really, in hindsight, looking back, it's like, wow, what a difference. Like, what a difference small changes made.
Yeah.
And Lee, that's actually a question that I have for you. Jenny, I know you have a very small team, and like implementing anything new that would require a lot of time is probably a daunting task. So this sounds like it was something that was very easy to just kind of make the change. Once you bought into it and can make that change. But Lee, I'm wondering from an organizational standpoint, like if that's great to know about the capacity, but how about this idea for larger groups? Like we're talking about conferences that are thousands and thousands. Yeah. Is this something that you would recommend for that?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking in our attendees, and I know there's some folks doing larger conferences. So that's a good question. Yeah, I think there's two things to think about, or the big thing I would think about first is it in person or is it online or is it a hybrid combination? So in some ways we can do a lot of things really quickly and really well online, and some of those things we kind of still have to do in person. So one of my great frustrations is just, if we had 5,000 people and we said, we want you all to pair up in groups of 3, it seems like I should just be able to click a button on an online platform these days and do that. And it's just not that easy with the technology, right? So Zoom is great. EVA builds on Zoom. We can do a lot of breakouts, but we can't get to that number. But if we say it's really important for us to have people meet each other, there are lots of ways to skin that cat. We could do lots of different breakouts. We could do them at different times. We could do them over different time zones. We could do them on different topics. We can use some other software add-ons to pair people up, offline and whatever else. So I think that's a big question. And then if it's in person, it opens up just a lot more possibilities, right? And I think this gets back to, I know there's some meeting planners in the attendees here, right? Of that initial, if we can do this work before we book a venue, then maybe we say, I don't need one room and 20 little breakout rooms. Maybe I need one giant room that's like an airplane hangar, and we just go to different sides of the room, or we work with what we've got to get to these small group collaboration sessions or something like that. Yeah, I think it's really easy to scale it. I think, I was talking to somebody the other day that does a 90,000 person conference. You basically buy up Vegas. It's hard to have 90,000 people all interacting at the same time, but we don't go to conferences to meet 89,999 other people. We go to conferences to meet, the 5 other people that are awesome, that can help us in our careers, or that we can pair with or partner with, or, something. So the impetus is not go meet everyone at the conference. It's meet the people who are valuable and provide, an excellent experience to you. So I think that's what I would focus on more than, I didn't meet everyone at the conference. Well, you were never going to. So.
And Jenny, in terms of like, it seems like you really adopted this change and really said we can do this and championed it. Talk to me a little bit about, or talk to us about other people, like in terms of your board or other key stakeholders. Did you have to do a hard sell to get them to buy into making this change?
We're a little autonomous in what we do, Vanu. So I think we had the benefit of sort of running our own playbook. I think the ultimate result was, though, that an awful lot of people were impressed, that were surprised perhaps on what the end result was when we were all done. We did a fair amount of of trying to build this up with our marketing, which was something I was going to mention. And this was the suggestion that Lee had given us, that set an expectation, right? Like make sure people are coming sort of knowing they're going to be engaged. They're going to be a part of this. You know, if you're planning on multitasking and taking care of your emails, you're not going to get as much out of this, right? Because we're setting this up in a way that we want to make you involved. So our marketing really, you know, this isn't your typical insurance conference, and, you know, be prepared to be more interactive, engaged than, you know, than you have in the past, and things like that. But I know as I said, you know, our others in the organization were very impressed by the end result.
Before we go on, I just want, like, we have this like crazy Jamboard with all these colors, right? In the end, Vinu, it comes back to you and we say, can you execute this? And I mean, I know the answer to the story, but what is that like for you on that side? Because like for me, I'm not usually in the picture, right? It usually is just platform vendor and then there's a conference organizer. And I'm saying, do all this other crazy stuff. Do you hate it? That's my question.
I think it was really interesting. In the very first question, Jenny came to us, right? We're the event, the virtual platform, and came to us, what can you do? And our answer was, well, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. So what comes first? And, you know, I think it's really important that if you do want to make these changes, that you've got to find a partner that is willing to have that discussion with you and say, you know, here's our limitations, here's where we can go. And knowing that, you know, kind of setting that foundation, saying, you know, we use Zoom, we can use Zoom meetings, Zoom webinars, whichever format works your style. And, you know, once you work with someone like Lee or internally changing up that format, just let us know from a Zoom tech perspective. Alexis likes to know, you know, am I sharing my screen? Kind of going through a run of show, just like you would in person. What are we sharing? What are we doing? Are we helping you create breakout rooms? And we become part of your production team, just like you would with an AV company, of just kind of figuring out, you know, AV companies not going to help you with your content or the format of that content, but they will make that content shine, right? And make sure that that's facilitated great. And that's kind of how you have to look at a virtual company, and to see if they provide you with that flexibility. Now, even if you don't have a virtual company and you're just using Zoom on its own, these are great things that you can use on your own, using breakout rooms. And, you know, we did a lot of testing and practicing with Jenny and her team as well, just to make sure everyone was comfortable. We knew what was happening. And also, before you completely went to this new format, we kind of walked through that, right, with you and said, well, this is how it could work and who would control what.
Absolutely.
And that level.
That did absolutely put us more at ease. I mean, you can talk about it all day long, but until you actually like experience it, like for myself, a breakout room, it's like conceptually, I understand what that is, but like, how does it, you know, how does the user feel, and what? And so walking through that was hugely comforting, right? Because it was like, well, that works really slick. I really love this. I really think, actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I think we decided to use it in more sessions after we saw it demoed, because we were like, well, we'll try it in this one. But then we're like, oh, we can do that in all of them because it just works so well.
And it's nice to experience it from not only from a planner standpoint, from a programming standpoint, because you put on different goggles, right? And then when we were going through testing, you actually tested it as if you were an attendee and what that experience was like. Yep. And actually putting in, and I think sometimes that we all run so fast, sometimes we forget to do that, right? Like, what does it feel like to be on the other side? And it was nice for us also to be able to do that. But partnering with people like Lee that go about trying new technology, what can you incorporate, and making that, extending that content, right? It's not only extending the content, but extending the engagement beyond just the hours that you're broadcasting. It's pretty impressive.
And I'll just say, I mean, I think knowing what was happening behind the scenes, right, that having somebody in the EVA team, or having that EVA team there to build out the website and try this stuff out, I think in a way, Jenny gave you the time that we could sit down and we could do, it wasn't hours and hours of work, but I think took that load off your shoulders, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because we didn't need to worry about sort of the skin around it all, right? Like that was in Eva's hands and done like just so well. Yeah, it just, everything came together. We did really up our game, like honestly, we really, really did. And the feedback was great. I'm a little worried about the in-person one, right? Like, I don't know if people are going to be as engaged, you know?
What I think is interesting is that, honestly, I know that this was a big game changer for you, Jenny, but I don't think that the time investment that you did to make this was too intensive.
No,
it wasn't a burden.
Nope.
And it was embraced. It seemed like it was pretty embraced pretty well. So the other thing, Lee, I think a lot of times, especially as meeting planners, we like for things to be as perfect as possible, right? We want coffee to be served on time. We want our breaks to, start on time, and just everything, the surroundings, the lights are on, the AV's working, like no glitches, right?
Yeah.
But talking about small changes, do you feel like you have to make this change? If you want to do something like this, do you have to do it for all your sessions, or can you start smaller? Like, what is there a magic formula to say this is the way it's going to work?
There's a magic formula. Sign up for my newsletter. No, I mean, again, if we go back to that Mentimeter at the beginning of people saying we think that there's 70% more capacity out there, I mean, I would say, man, what's it like to have your conference be, to go from 30% to 40% or to 50% or something like that. So no, I don't think it has to be every single session, right? If I did this little thing in 2 sessions as opposed to 0 sessions, what happens is in this little, pink section here, everyone at the conference or everyone in those sessions meets 2 or 3 other people. And then they come out into the halls and you multiply that by dozens and dozens of people. And all of a sudden, all these other little groups start to connect and all these connections are made. I think when I was talking to Jenny and Ron, I think I was pushing them over here. You could do all this and we could, nothing but breakouts, right? And they were like, okay, we'll come along, right? Mm-hmm. And it was still great, right? And I think, Jenny, you would say, we now feel like we can push it further and further and further. I don't think you have to eat the whole elephant in one sitting, right? I think you can.
Well, right, absolutely. And I think we did utilize things more than we thought we would when we first had our conversations with you, and it was really like kind of shaky, scary, like, oh, it's different, but it's funny, just quickly, when you were just talking about the changes not being a heavy lift. When we first talked about doing this webinar, I had a moment where I was thinking like, well, what am I going to be able to contribute right to this webinar? Like, what can I say? And I'm like, oh, well, we did this and we did this and we did this. And I thought, and none of them were so impactful to me from an effort standpoint that they even stuck with me. I thought, well, we didn't do much. And then I'm like, well, I guess we did do a lot, but it wasn't hard. It just wasn't difficult to do.
Jenny, Kyle actually has some questions about your specific conference in terms of how many attendees, and let's start with there. How many attendees did you have?
Right. So overall the sessions, we had about 270. Each individual session, I want to say in the neighborhood of like 100, 125, just kind of depended, certain ones. But I did see the question pertaining to that about how many in each breakout room. And I think we capped it at like 10. I think we said 8 to 10 pretty much we wanted to do in each room. So somewhere in that vicinity. And regarding a lead, we did just sort of put the offer out there when we put people, set them up to understand they were going into breakouts. We said, can one person just volunteer to sort of be the spokesperson? And then when we came out of the breakouts, they were the ones that put the information in chat. So it wasn't super formal. It wasn't that we, said you got to know it ahead of time or whatever, but it was just one of those, like you do when you were sitting at a round table at a conference, somebody be the scribe kind of situation.
Yeah. And I would just say, my bias is always to go smaller with breakout rooms, right? Like sometimes people are like, it didn't work. And I go, how many people were in it? And they said 20. And it's like, well, yeah, it's not going to work. It's hard to have a 20-person conversation, right? So to me, I love 4-person groups, 3-person groups, 5-person groups, right? I think once it gets bigger, you do sort of need a lion tamer in there to help keep things straight. But one of the challenges with something like Zoom is if you have thousands of people, you can't have thousands of breakout rooms yet. So the technology is limiting there. Yeah.
And then Gil, Lee, would you say that in terms of breakout rooms, does everybody have to participate? I mean, some people just are kind of lurkers, right? They're just there to soak it in. But do you think you need to cater to them in the breakout rooms? Like, how do you handle those people? Is it okay that they're lurkers? I tend to be a lurker, so.
So I think the bigger the group, the easier it is to lurk and not be involved. On the flip side, I would say if you just whisk people away cold into a room where there's only one other person, and especially if you leave them there for 20 minutes, it gets to be uncomfortable unless you just have amazing chemistry right off the bat, right? So I think about this risk ladder or this progression of, if I start the conference and I say, we're going to put you in groups of 3 and it's going to be 6 minutes and you each have 2 minutes to talk, people go, oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm fine with that. And, sometimes you see people and they're like, oh my gosh, my hair isn't done and I'm just going to exit the breakout room. And you're like, it's fine. But I would say the reason we go to conferences is engagement and to interact with people. So I get that people are introverted and I get that people don't want to have conversations all day long. But I think when you give people an opportunity to talk about the thing that they really care about, I love being an independent insurance agent. I love talking about the technology in my field. I want to do that with other people. I mean, I would say probably the most common reaction I get to doing breakout rooms and all the stuff that we've been doing over the last couple of years online is from introverts and people who think that they are shy and don't like to engage and don't think of themselves as networking people. And they go, oh, that was great. I really like that. I didn't like walking into a giant ballroom and having to go make sparkling conversation next to the cheese plate with strangers. Like, that's really difficult. When I say, Vinu and Ginny, I'm going to put you in a little room and I just want you to talk about the future of insurance tech. Can you do that for 3 minutes? Sure. So, 100% of the people are not going to be engaged, but I think it's a much higher percentage than we might otherwise expect. Yeah.
Well, one of the pieces of feedback, I'm sorry, Vinu, one of the pieces of feedback we had too was that our breakouts weren't long enough. Like, people wanted more time. They were enjoying that, interaction and that discussion. And we hadn't anticipated that and didn't really build in as much maybe as we should have. So that is definitely a change that I would make going forward. Yeah.
So maybe we've got a couple minutes left. Is that the wrap up thing? Is like, what would you do different, Ginny?
Yeah, I guess that is, because there wasn't a lot different, I think that I would say we would do, but we definitely would allow more time for breakouts. That's for sure.
And Lee, actually, what we've seen other clients try it out this way, where you do have the breakout rooms, but also extend the conversation outside of that time and say, okay, we're going to regroup in a different session an hour or a day later and specifically talk about our wrap up to that conversation. So there's not only just one way to do it, right? So it's great that you tried it this way and now you've gotten the feedback and you can make those adjustments for next time. We had one question about pricing for your conference. Pricing can run the gamut, but now that you've done virtual, you've gone from in-person to virtual, going back to in-person, how does pricing play into that? And do you think the engagement piece adds more value so you can charge more?
Well, actually, our conference is free.
Oh, so that's right.
I can't say that we're charging anything.
Could you be attracting more people?
Is free. I think the absolutely. I mean, I think the engagement piece, the virtual piece alone, obviously helped us reach a much larger audience than we normally would. But the engagement piece, I think, absolutely added a ton of value, and I think more people would definitely want to participate.
Yeah. And probably your sponsors as well. If they're seeing more people excited about it and your attendance numbers grows, you're probably not only making your current sponsors happy, but, opening the eyes of new sponsors to come on board, right?
Yeah, and we work a little bit differently because our conference actually doesn't have direct sponsors, and we have supporting members that support ACT in general. So part of that membership is what allows us to do the conferences that we do. So it's a little bit different, but I absolutely agree. Probably in the majority of cases that is going to catch the eye, obviously, of additional sponsors and want to participate more in other conferences.
I just put up the, we didn't have like thousands of people putting up, dozens and dozens of ideas and stuff, but this is just the screen share is what this looks like to do questions that are more visual. And you can see like somebody said, can you save the Jamboard for later? And somebody else replies and someone else says, thanks. Like, you see some of this conversation happening and just some of the like clusters happening where people say, oh, I have a question that's also about Jamboard or also about engagement, and they'll start to cluster and we can move them around. So I don't know if this is the best example. It's sort of like a sideshow to what we were talking about here today, but at least you get a sense for how we were using it, I think.
Now we are at the top of the hour. So I want to thank Jenny and Lee. Thank you so much. This is like such an easy conversation with you and just sharing obviously what you know, but that you really embrace that, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to move a mountain to make massive changes, and they're doable. And I'm so glad that the collaboration worked out well and is something that you're going to do going forward. So I appreciate that quite a bit. But as we sign off here, Jenny, what is the one thing you would like to leave everybody with in terms of like empowering them to make this change going forward?
Oh, I would say don't hesitate. I mean, we overthought, like I said, I think our biggest challenge was getting out of our own heads about it. Don't overthink it. And the changes were not difficult to implement, but impactful, like super impactful, easy stuff that made a big difference.
Well, thank you. How about you, Lee? What is the one biggest tip you'd like to leave everybody with? Don't yell at us, though.
I use this, PowerPoint substitute quite a bit, right? And I talk about conferences are a place where we confer, right? That's the root word. And I think just don't lose sight of that, right? If a conference becomes something where it's just people watching recorded content, we could do that on our own, right? We could do that on YouTube. But if we're saying this is an event, this is a conference, it's a place where people come together to meet their peers and engage in topics and learn from each other. Yeah. I think that really drives a different kind of event. And that's what I would keep in mind.
Well, I appreciate both of you very much for taking the time to join us today. And for all of you out there that stayed with us, thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining us. Hope that you gathered a few notes, but more importantly, the encouragement that you can do this. This is a change that you can implement, little or big. It's something you can do. You just have to do it. So thank you all. We'll make sure we get you this recording and links to all this good stuff that we've shared with you today, as well as contact information for Jenny and Lee. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. And again, thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you all.
Thanks, Manu.